Welcome back. Last session, we took a brief tour of MapleStory World's design mode. Today, we'll dive deeper into design mode creative tools and learn a bit more about using MapleStory assets to start creating our environment. Let's begin by changing our world's theme to something more interesting. The default Hennessy's theme is great, but perhaps the calming atmosphere of the Arcana theme will throw our players off guard. Notice as we change the theme, the tile in the device section changes to the tile corresponding to the theme. Devices are meant to provide functional and interactable components to your world, and you may have realized that the tile device is the only device that is affected by theme. If we switch to the Design tab, we also notice that the design assets also change according to the selected theme. Assets in this tab are specific to the selected theme and are meant to add additional flair to your world beyond just default tiles and background assets. However, if we switch to the Environment tab, we notice that changing the theme doesn't affect these assets at all. This is because environmental assets are meant more as general environment props, not specific to any one theme. We'll begin using device, design, and environment assets to start building out our world in just a moment, but first, let's take a look at tiles and learn how they work so we can expand our world a bit and make space for our assets. Let's switch back to our devices and select the tile device. I want to bring your attention to the grid lines on our map. This hasn't been very important when it comes to placement of our design and environmental assets, but for tiles, this becomes very important when it comes to placement rules for our tiles. Depending on where in the grid we place our tiles will determine the shape that the foothold takes. If we hover over one of the corners in a grid square and click to place our tile, we see a single block of our tile being spawned into the grid. And notice the red lines that get formed when we place this tile. This is the foothold that the player will be standing on when they jump or walk on top of this tile. Similarly, if we place our tiles in the other three corners as well, we've now created 4 individual disconnected tiles, each with their own foothold lines. We can remove a tile by right-clicking on any one of the tiles that we've placed on our grid. Let's remove the tiles in the top 2 corners of our grid square. If we now hover our cursor over the line between our 2 remaining sides and click to place a tile, we can see that the 2 tiles are now connected and the foothold shape is automatically adjusted to form a platform. Let's remove our platform by right-clicking on all 3 tiles again, and this time let's try clicking on that line between our corners. This creates the exact same platform that we created by placing and connecting 2 corners together. Clicking on the line then becomes a shortcut for placing 3 tiles at once to create a platform. If we click on the lines for the other sides of our grid square, we've now placed 8 tiles into our grid in 4 clicks, leaving the center empty. If we now click on the center of the grid square, we can fill the hole to create a full block. However, as you might be able to guess by now, there's a shortcut to this shape as well. If we right-click and drag our cursor along the tiles we've placed, we can remove all the tiles we've placed so far. And this time, let's simply click on the center of our grid square. And just like that, we've created a full set of 9 squares to create a block in a single click. Using what we've learned, let's try creating a staircase attached to the right side of our bottom platform by clicking along the edges of our grid square. Then, flatten it off at the end to create a staircase connecting to a new platform. But because we've only utilized the edges, the staircase we've made looks a bit hollow. So let's go through and fill in the spaces by clicking on the centers of the grid squares underneath each step of our staircase. I have one last shape to show you before we wrap up our discussion of tile placement. On the other side of our platform, instead of a staircase, let's create a declining slope instead. Let's start with the staircase as we've done before, but this time let's simply click on the center of the grid squares to create blocks to form our staircase. Then, we'll right-click on each of the corners of the staircases to remove it. And with that, we've created a clean declining slope. To finish off the hill that we've created, I think a great big ethereal tree would complete our look. Let's click on the Design tab and search for the tree asset. We'll place it into our world by left-clicking above the platform we created to place our tree down. I'm going to go through and add more assets into this world, but I encourage you to pause the video and take this time to start creating your own designs before joining me in the next section. When designing maps for platformers, it helps to add more dimensionality to the environment. If you look at the right side of our screen, we can see the layers icon, which helps us do just that. Currently, we only have one single layer, but let's add a second layer to our map. Next to one of our existing tiles, let's try clicking the center of the grid square beside it to continue the path. But once we place our new tile block, notice that the foothold lines overlap each other. This means that the tile blocks did not merge with each other. And the reason this is because the tiles that we place are on a layer in front of the block that we tried to connect. The higher the layer we place the block in, the closer the layer is to the camera. But if that's the case, what layer then is our player on? Layer 1 or layer 2? Well, the player is actually on the layer of the platform that the player is currently standing on. Meaning, the player will switch between the layers as the player jumps onto platforms on different layers. To better illustrate this example, let me walk you through a visual example. I've created stairs on layer 2 overlapping the initial slope that we created on layer 1, and placed a tree on top of the platform on layer 2. Then, on layer 1, I've created a small foothold so that the player will be able to jump up from layer 1 onto the platform on layer 2. Let's press play and see what happens here. As I walk down the slope of layer 1, notice that the character walks behind the overlapping staircase on layer 2. Then, if we jump onto the platform we created on layer 1, notice that the character is covered by the tree resting on the platform on layer 2. Now watch closely. As I jump up to the layer 2 platform with this tree, as soon as the character lands onto the platform, the character's layer swaps to be in front of the tree on layer 2. The layer that the player is on will always be the layer of the foothold that the player is standing on, and will always be on top of all objects on that layer. The final concept that I want to discuss is maps. Below the layer button we looked at earlier, there's an orange maps button where we can manage the different maps available in our platformer. If we click on this, we can see the map we just edited named Wait by default, along with another map named Map 01. These are the maps that the player currently has access to in our world. You need a minimum of 2 maps in any given platformer world, one for the reading room and one for the map. There can only be one reading room map at any given time, and we can designate the waiting map by toggling the orange toggle on and off. However, we can add additional maps that the players can explore in the game mode through a game map specific device called Portal. We'll discuss that in more detail in a later video. For now, that's everything I have to share in this video. Thank you so much for joining me to explore the waiting room's features in MapleStory World's design mode. Join me in the next section as we dive into the game mode and the awesome new devices and obstacles available to you.